After using the self-assessment and the scales, I set 3 growth goals. The first one is with element 1, providing scales and rubrics. My second growth goal will be with element 3, celebrating success, and my third growth goal will be with element 39, understanding students' backgrounds and interests. When I did the self-assessments and used the scales and looked things over, I found kind of several areas of strength and several areas of weakness for me, and then just went from there to decide what I was going to focus on. Some of my overall strengths I found are highlighting critical content and making sure students know what is important for them to learn. Another strength is on formal assessments, setting or getting common assessments set up with my teaching team and checking in with them pretty frequently and with the students as far as where they are. I also do well with practice sessions and organizing students to interact. How my classroom is run with rules and procedures, demonstrating witness, and just the physical layout are also strengths that I showed. Some areas I saw as a weakness were providing scales and rubrics, celebrating success, generating and defending claims, using friendly controversy, providing opportunities for students to talk about themselves, and understanding students' backgrounds and interests. The reason I chose the 3 that I did was, first of all, for the first one, I chose providing scales and rubrics. I feel that this is a strength for me in some ways, but I definitely have some room for growth. And when I looked at my weaknesses overall, I really tried to look at what I felt would be the most beneficial for my students, and then what also would help me the most with my teaching overall. And so that's where I came up with the 3 I did. As far as providing scales and rubrics for math, I do have a scale for every unit, and I share them with the students at the beginning of the unit. However, I don't necessarily feel they're very student friendly or 5th grade friendly. They're kind of overwhelming, and I know the students feel that when they see them. I also want to work in this area. Some of the pieces on the scale that I know that I'm not doing are returning to the scale and referencing it often, letting students know how that individual lesson of the day ties in with the scale and the unit and how they all play together. Essentially, the students see the scale and then it's kind of forgotten about. In social studies, I don't even have any scales for the units, and so I definitely want to work on that. I do tell the students verbally what the goal for the day is, but I know that they don't necessarily see the whole big picture of how it ties into the unit and ties to the standards and things, and so I really want to work on making that more cohesive. How I plan to show evidence of growth for this growth goal is I plan to rewrite the math priority standards. We have 3 priority standards, and those specifically I want to rewrite the scales, that go with the math priority standards, so they are more student friendly, so students really can read them and know exactly what is expected of them, and it's more in 5th grade terms versus what I have now. I want my goal for this to show growth is to create at least 2 scales for social studies, 2 social studies units, and use them within the unit, and again make them student friendly for students. I use slideshow presentations for both my math and social studies lessons and units. I have them and kind of redo them each year, unit, whatever I need to do to update them, but I build from the same thing, and there's a slideshow that I go through each day. And so I'm going to, part of my goal for this growth goal is to post within the slide the daily lesson objective, and then indicate how that ties to the unit objective or the scale, where it falls into that, and how so students can see the connection of what we're doing that day, how it's going to get them to the 3 on the scale at the end of the unit. And another piece of evidence that I'm hoping will show is that when students are asked, they will be able to link the scale to their learning goal and vice versa, so they know how they all tie together. The second element that I chose for my growth goal is element 3, celebrating success. I feel like in some ways I do well with this, but only really as a whole class. We celebrate, MCA scores, and at the end of the year, looking at the priority standard scale, celebrating that, the majority of the students were at a 3 or higher. But I really struggle with small celebrations and celebrating growth along the way. I often feel that if I acknowledge, students that are at a 3, the ones who aren't yet are going to feel bad, and so I struggle back and forth with that as far as how to do that. And so my goal is to really celebrate all successes, all show signs of growth, and to make students realize that what they're doing is working and is good. And so the evidence that I'm planning to have to show for this growth is to have a formal system that acknowledges students' growth at the end of the quarter, or the unit. So like some of the strategies I saw, I haven't quite decided exactly what I'm going to do yet, but if you are at a 3, you ring a bell. So something that like really makes them stand out that they met that goal and they are acknowledged, versus right now it's really just that their number, which nobody knows who it is up on the wall. And so they aren't recognized for reaching that, other than like individually they know that they did and I know that they did, but to really like give them that kind of shout out. When students asked, I hope they will be able to say that they feel celebrated for their success. On my survey, I saw that most of them really didn't necessarily feel that way. I plan to send parent notes home congratulating students on their success. I'm thinking most likely this will be at the end of quarter, just so I kind of can keep track of what I've sent and acknowledging students' growth. So if a student went from a 1.5 to a 2.5, to acknowledge that and send something home. So even though they maybe aren't at the 3 yet, parents and students know that I'm noticing that they've shown growth. And then I plan to have a classroom poster that students get to sign when they reach a 3 in that priority standard. And so it will be, like I said, the scales that I have and the tracking that I have that's posted, it's just their numbers, and so it doesn't, so someone can't see that so-and-so is at a 1 and they feel bad, but this way when they reach a 3, they get to put their name and they get to, ring the bell and kind of make a big deal about getting there. So those are my plans for that element. And then my third element that I chose is understanding students' backgrounds and interests. I chose this one because I feel like ever since we moved to a middle school model, I struggle with really getting to know my students on a deeper level, because they're in and out of my classroom so frequently that it's really just, I focus so much on the content and what we're teaching, and I need to back up a little bit and get to know the students better. I do know that will help me form better relationships with students and maybe reach some students who I have struggles to connect with, and if I can get to know them a little better, that will help. I do feel like I have a little bit better relationship and know more about my homeroom class because I see them more, but the classes that I only have for math and social studies, I just don't have that. I feel like I don't have the time to build those relationships, and so I want to find some strategies that will help me with that. So my plan for that is to have a Google form, for sure bi-weekly, but maybe in the beginning even daily, but like a little survey that they fill in when they fill out when they come to my class, a few questions. I've already found some on Teachers Pay Teachers that I plan to use, kind of edit a little bit and use for myself. But they just ask questions about their life in general and how they're feeling that day, and how their weekend was, what they like to do outside of school, favorite foods, favorite sports, things they want me to know about their family, anything like that, so that I can hopefully just get to know them a little more and be able to have pieces that I can talk to them about and connect with them on. And again, just hopefully another goal or another piece of evidence to that would be that when asked, students will say that I take an interest in them and care about them outside of school. All right, then looking at my data from my surveys. So the providing scales and rubrics, when I look at what the survey results were for that, I felt like, my averages were probably higher than they should be if I'm using it as a goal. But also I teach the students the same students for math and social. So I think it was hard for them to differentiate. Like, I do some of these things in math, but I definitely don't do them in social studies. It was the lower ones, or where there's some discrepancy, was where it talked about me talking about learning goals and scales in each lesson, and having them set personal learning goals. And I definitely would agree with that. That's where I want to grow the most, is really making the connection between their daily learning goals. Like, I do feel that my math students definitely know what a scale is, and they know where they're supposed to be on the priority standards. But if you'd ask them any day during the unit, like, how does this tie to the priority standard, they probably wouldn't be able to tell you, because I don't make that connection, and that's what I want. That's where I want to grow. And then, like I said, in social studies, I don't even have scales. I haven't referenced them at all because I don't have them. So I think in some ways my data for that one is a little misleading, because the students weren't necessarily able to differentiate between math and social studies and really what I was asking. So even though the numbers there were a little bit higher, I still feel like I have a lot of room to grow in that area. Celebrating success, a lot of the students picked don't agree or disagree, but most of my averages were 3s, except for the last statement about giving out certificates from accomplishments. And I would agree. I definitely need to work on recognizing student achievement. It's just not something that has been a focus for me, and I want to change that. Like I said a little bit earlier too, I have always struggled with, I don't want the ones who aren't at a 3 or aren't meeting the goal to feel bad. And so that's really going to be my focus when I'm looking at how I can improve on this, is how do I do this with recognizing those who are succeeding and exceeding the goal, but also recognize those who are working towards the goal and showing growth and doing what they need to do. The standard deviations were all pretty close to 1. There was a little bit more discrepancy in the ones where it says recognizing individual achievements, and I would have to guess that the ones who met the goal probably felt more recognized, because like I said, I felt more comfortable recognizing them, and not so much the ones who weren't, because I didn't want to draw attention to the fact that they weren't meeting the goal. And then the data for my third growth goal, understanding students' backgrounds and interests. Looking at the data, this showed I definitely had the most room for growth out of the 3 goals in this area. And I definitely can see that. I know that I'm glad to see that students feel safe in the classroom. I think I make that happen, and I'm happy about that. But most of them said that I don't really know about their lives outside of school, and I think some of them, the ones I maybe connected with a little bit more, that were easier for me to connect, or I knew their parents, or I knew what they did outside of school. It was easier for me to talk to them, and I didn't necessarily make a good enough effort with all of the other students. And so there was a little discrepancy in the data for that some students felt like I was interested in their life outside of school, but I think it probably was the ones that it was easier for me. And so I'm hoping that these surveys that I plan to do will enable me to reach all students and have something to connect to with all students, even if it's just one thing I can ask them about outside of school, so that they know that I care, and I know that I'm interested in them, and it can help establish those relationships with them. So those are my 3 goals and how I chose them, and I'm excited to start working on them.